Hey guys, this week's one kettlebell workout is a circuit of 5 exercises. You're going to perform 3 to 4 sets total. You could possibly eke out a 5th set if your kettlebell is particularly light, for example, and each set is not taking that much out of you. But if you have a sufficiently heavy kettlebell and you do these movements the way they're supposed to be done, 4 sets is going to be totally fine. Possibly even 3. So the movements, I'll go over them obviously one by one, show the appropriate technique, different scaling options and variations. Exercise 1 is a curtsy lunge. You'll do 10 reps each side, depending upon the weight of your kettlebell. If 10 is a bit too easy for you, this is true for all the movements. You could bump that up to 12 to 15, something like that. Staggered stance high pull is exercise 2. A rotational push press. A sumo stance good morning. And then a kneeling cross curl and press. I'll show each exercise one by one. The intention is to really just kind of like go from one exercise right into the next with minimal rest. Just kind of rest as needed. Shouldn't be too out of breath throughout. It's more of a strength training workout. But you don't want to be like fully recovered between sets either, or between exercises. So the curtsy lunge has its name because it's a curtsy. So you're going to start with your feet together underneath your hips. You're going to lunge. My left leg right now is going to be the working leg, so I'm going to curtsy with my right leg by kicking it behind and out to the side, basically as far as I comfortably can. Lower down under control, tap the back knee to the floor, push through the front foot, back to standing. How far I kick my leg back and out to the side is really just dictated by my strength, my coordination, my flexibility. Also making sure that I don't put too much stress on that knee. This could be an awkward kind of rotational stress on that knee. So make sure that knee position stays lined up with the foot as best as possible. If that position aggravates things, just perform a reverse lunge. Just step back, tap the knee to the floor, come back to standing. The kettlebell won't just be sitting by your side here. We kind of negate the purpose of a one kettlebell workout. You're going to rack it. So rack it in the front rack. Tuck the fist underneath your chin. The elbow stays in tight to the body. So you want to rely on this position here and support the kettlebell in that rack as opposed to resting it on your shoulder. So this will add a lot of benefit in terms of core stability and shoulder stability to support that position. And you can see it's in the opposite arm of the leg that is performing the lunge. You'll do 10 on one side and then switch the kettlebell to the other side and switch legs for another 10. The high pull, so it's a staggered stance high pull. Staggered stance means that your back leg, the toes line up with the heel of the front foot, essentially. Maybe a little bit further back, if anything, just a few inches, but you're not looking for a split stance here. And now you want the majority of your weight in the front leg. Let's call it like 70% about. That foot stays flat the whole time. The high pull, the kettlebell is going to start in front of your back foot. The heel stays off the ground, and the movement is primarily driven by a nice aggressive snap of the hip, and then concludes with a high pull, with the elbow high and outside, and the kettlebell ending up basically up in the armpit. Okay? And you'll rotate the trunk slightly as you do it. It'll be a snap of the hip and a pull nice and quick. I'll do a couple reps here. So to initiate, tighten the trunk. It's a nice smooth pull off the ground, an aggressive snap of the hip, and rotate towards the kettlebell and pull that elbow high and outside. Okay. The rotational push press. So the rack position will be the same as what it was earlier for the lunge. Support that kettlebell in that rack. Fist stays under the chin every rep. Your feet now are next to one another to start. Push press, obviously you're going to bend your knees, you're going to snap and punch the kettlebell up overhead. The rotational component means that you're going to rotate your foot, your hip, and your trunk essentially 90 degrees to the side of the arm that's not working. And the way that'll look, I'll load up the legs and snap and punch. And I end up rotated 90 degrees, facing away from that kettlebell. Control it back down into that rack position, rotate back to the start, and repeat. You can see the kettlebell ends up basically directly out overhead, not out in front. So you're not punching in that direction, you're punching straight up overhead basically. Okay? And just the use of the non-working arm, just to support that rotation, you can kind of pull with that non-working arm, just so it does the opposite essentially of the arm that's working. If the rotational component makes smoke start coming out of your ears and it gets too confusing as far as the coordination, just perform a regular push press. That'll be fine. It's 10 each side, that's the goal. The sumo stance, good morning. So there's a few different variations of this. I'll start with the easiest and work my way to the hardest. The sumo stance is a wide stance. I'll do this from the side. Perhaps even wider than what you would normally assume for a sumo position. You could even kick your feet out a little bit wider than that for this purpose. Your knees are just going to remain soft the entire time, not locked out. And what we're looking for is a hinge of the hip, keeping the back nice and flat, bending down and getting as deep into that position as you possibly can. You'll feel that stretch in the hamstring while still maintaining the posture, and then stand back up. And you're just going to support the kettlebell behind you. Just grab the handles, lower it back behind the head. It's basically resting between your shoulder blades, and just lower down, nice and slow. Get as deep into the stretch as you can, tighten the belly, and squeeze the hips back forward. That would be the easiest variation of that, not to say that it's easy. A more challenging variation would be to perform one side at a time, so kind of like a single leg good morning, so to speak, even though both feet are still going to be planted on the floor. Starting position will be the same, only now you're going to rotate the hips and lower down towards one leg. Find the stretch in that hamstring, keep the back flat, and then stand back up and repeat on the opposite side. Then an even more challenging variation of that would be to lower down to one side, stay bent over as you rotate to the other leg, and then stand back up and repeat. So basically like a little bit of an around the world. So I'll show one rep, lower down, keep the belly nice and tight, slide around across to the other leg, and then stand back up. And then you'll lower back down to that leg, and then again slide across, keeping that torso parallel to the ground, and stand back up. Those are particularly challenging, especially with a heavier kettlebell. If you're not confident in the strength of your lower back and the mobility of your hamstrings, or if you've ever had any kind of history of back pain, I wouldn't mess around with that variation. But if all things are operating the way that they're supposed to be and you're good to go there, you can give it a shot. If not, those easier variations will get the job done. And then the kneeling, cross, curl, and press. So there's a few different ways to do this. Again, depending upon the weight of your kettlebell, either way you're half kneeling. It's really intended to be like a cross chop, it's called, where you take the kettlebell, it starts in front of your kneeling leg. The goal is to maintain a rigid trunk, so you're not going to really be rotating all that much as you do it. You might have to rotate just a little bit in that starting position, but try to minimize that, stay nice and tall. From there, the chop would be arms relatively straight, and to pull the kettlebell up over the opposite shoulder, lower back under control. I wrote curl and press because if your kettlebell is heavy enough, it'll be very, very challenging to keep your arms even relatively straight as you do that. So what you can do is turn it into more of a curl and then press over the opposite shoulder. So I'll show that variation. Grab the handles, curl the kettlebell in, and then press it up over that shoulder, and then lower back under control. And I can assure you, if your kettlebell is heavy enough, that is still plenty hard. Okay, so again, choose based around the weight of your kettlebell. If you can manage the straight arm version, I would go with that. If it's heavy enough to warrant the curl and press, go for it. You could even do like some sets one way, some sets another, and experiment with which one feels better. I'll put this workout in the description of the video, guys, and we'll have links to it in SugarWOD. I guess if you found the video, you already knew that it was in SugarWOD. Like chicken before the egg. All right, guys, thanks, and we'll talk soon. Enjoy. Reach out with questions, as always.